all of us have heard about the Indus Valley civilization. It is one of the 4 oldest civilizations known to humanity, standing aside Mesopotamia, Egypt, and China. But how many of us truly know how old it is or how advanced it was over 5,000 years ago? At the heart of the civilization was the Indus River, a glacier-fed lifeline flowing down from the Himalayas, nurturing one of the most sophisticated urban cultures the world had ever seen. In the next few minutes, we are going to take a step closer to understanding the true heritage of India through the lens of the ancient geography, understanding it from a totally different perspective, and most importantly, grounded in facts and truth as always. So let's get started. When we speak of ancient India, we cannot ignore the Rig Veda, the oldest surviving scripture in the world. Open any mainstream source today, even Wikipedia, and it casually states that the Rig Veda was composed around 1500 BCE. But the date that is not based on evidence, and it was proposed by Max Müller, a 19th century German philologist. What most people, 95% of people who say that Rig Veda was written in 1500 BC, mind you, they don't know that Max Müller himself later admitted that his dating was speculative and most likely incorrect. But still we cling on to that 1500 BC date. Yes, even today our textbooks continue to repeat this outdated claim that Rig Veda was written in 1500 BC. That's not just unfortunate, it's a shame. We owe it to ourselves to correct our understanding based on facts and not colonial assumptions. But setting the debate on dates aside for a moment, the Rig Veda is far more than a religious text. In the next couple of minutes, we are going to look at it not through a spiritual lens, but as an ancient record of geography, people, and rivers. The Rig Veda gives us a window into a forgotten landscape, rivers that flowed, mountains that stood as witnesses, and civilizations that thrived in perfect harmony with nature. This is the lens through which we will now begin to explore the ancient geography of Bharat, one that has been hidden in plain sight, encoded in the verses of the Rig Veda. There is a section in Rig Vedam known as the Nadi Sukta. It appears in the 10th Mandala, 75th Sukta of Rig Veda. This powerful hymn praises the rivers of the ancient Indian subcontinent, not merely as water bodies or water sources, but as divine mothers, nurturers, and lifelines of ancient civilization. It is attributed to Rishi Sindhukshiti Priyamedha, a sage who captured the geographical soul of ancient Bharat through his verses. This Sukta offers remarkable insights into the ancient geography of India back then. Or maybe I should say the Indian subcontinent, because there was no political entities as such, but Bharat. I think it's safe to call it Bharat. So it gives remarkable insights into the ancient geography of Bharat back then, naming rivers, tracing their flow, and presenting a map of Bharat as it was known thousands of years ago. But before we explore this in depth, there is a critical misconception or misunderstanding we need to address. It's often said, especially in Orthodox Brahmin circles, that Vedas were never written, that they were only transmitted orally, which is correct, I wouldn't deny that. But Vedas were never written, it is a big misconception. This is a misunderstanding. Yes, Vedas are considered apaurisheya, not of human origin, but that speaks to their spiritual status, not their physical form. The truth is, Rig Veda was written down by human hands on palm leaves, carefully preserved across generations. It is as much a historical record as it is a sacred text. I repeat my words. Rig Veda is a historical record and also a sacred text. And now we are going to explore this profound hymn of Nadi Sukta to uncover the geographic memory encoded in the verses of the Rig Veda. So in the Rig Veda, it is written like this: O rivers Ganga, Yamuna, Sutudri, Parushni and Saraswati, alongside with Asikni, Vitasta, Marudvrada, Arjikya and Susoma, please accept my hymn and hear my prayers. And it goes on saying that it also gives the path of the river in a way. You begin your journey with Tritsama, Rasa, Susartu and Svetya, then flow together with Kubha, Sindhu and Mehatnu, finally reaching Krumu and Gomati on your way. Now at the outset, one thing is quite clear. There were certain names of important rivers mentioned in these hymns. That's one. And number two, the path of the rivers and their tributaries is also mentioned. I just gave you 2 slokas, but there are many other in the Rig Veda 10th mandala where Nadi Sukta is detailed. Let us try to understand this with better context and detail. Now, if we go through the complete Rig Vedam and try to identify which all rivers were mentioned, here is a quick scanner on how many times they were mentioned. Saraswati, the most important river in the Rig Vedam, is mentioned 72 times. And then in second place comes Sindhu, mentioned over 50 times. And then comes Parushni for 6 times and Rasa for 6 times. And then comes other rivers like Yamuna, Sutudri, Asikni, Arjikya, Susoma, Kubha, Krumu, Gomati, Ganga, Vitasta, Marudvrada, Tritsama, Susartu, Svetya and Mehatnu mentioned 1 or 2 times. There are a couple of things to unpack here. First and foremost, what caught my attention is today in Hinduism or Sanatana Dharma, which are the most important rivers, naturally comes Ganga and Yamuna. Of course, we have Godavari, Krishna and couple of other rivers which are very, very important, equally important. I don't deny that. But the most important of all is Ganga, and we all know that. But interestingly, if we look at Rig Vedam, Ganga is mentioned only once. The most important river back in those days was Saraswati and Sindhu. Primarily Saraswati, even more than Sindhu, it is Saraswati throughout the Rig Vedam. This is very, very important fact that everybody should understand, because the antiquity of the times of Rig Vedam is directly connected, rather deeply connected with the Saraswati river. And also the form of Sanatana Dharma that we have today is a lot different from the times of the Rig Veda. You see a fundamental shift in the divinity towards river. There are a lot many other aspects, but this contextually is a very important point that I want to put forward to all of you. Let's go a bit more detail into how the river Saraswati was explained or quoted and revered in the Rig Veda. A snippet of one of the hymns of Rig Veda says that Ambi tame, Nadi tame, Devi tame, Saraswati. That means, Saraswati, you are the best of all mothers, best of all rivers and best of all gods. This is what Rig Vedam reveres the river Saraswati about. Again, couple of things to unpack here. Number one, in Hinduism today, we worship trees and mountains and rivers as a very much part of the unending pantheon of Hinduism, right? We seek divinity in every part of nature, and rightly so. That's how it is, because a man should coexist with the nature, and every inch of the nature is divine. That's what we all believe in. Now, where is this idea coming from? That's coming from what you're seeing on the screen. Throughout Rig Vedam, all the forces of nature were deified and revered, and attributing a motherly character to a natural resource like a river starts from Rig Vedam. And I'm very proud of it, but I feel that I should be more responsible than being proud, not to throw garbage into the rivers that were once revered. But anyway, coming back to a topic. So that's one part. Now the second thing is, like I said, if you just read these lines, it is quite clear of what level of importance is river Saraswati for the people back those days, the times of Rig Veda. So the previous verse gave a spiritual outlook into how was river Saraswati perceived by people of those times. Now this part of the snippet gives a completely different perspective. This part says that it reads like this: Saraswati, glorious and roaring loudly, came together with the rivers. She, the mother of floods, the seventh river, and also the mother of Sindhu. With abundant milk and pure streams, she flowed strong and full, overflowing with power of her own waters. Rig Vedam 7:36. If you observe closely, this part of Rig Vedam gives very interesting information about the river. Glorious and roaring loudly, mother of floods, came together with other rivers. All this put together gives us a picture about the geography back then. River Saraswati back in those times was a massive river and was a source of a lot of floods and had a lot of tributaries. And most importantly, observe the word that I highlighted in black. Saraswati is revered as Sindhu Mata. That means the mother of Sindhu. So the river Sindhu, or Indus what we call today, is a tributary of Saraswati. This is what straight out of Rig Vedam we can understand. And when it comes to poetic narrations like abundant milk milk and pure streams? Well, it's talking about fresh water and the foam that the water contains. That foam generally it happens when the force of the water is too much, and right, the overflowing rivers, they have that white foam which is nothing but bubbles. So all these aspects give us a very interesting picture that Saraswati river was massive and it has lots of tributaries, and often it caused a lots of floods. And if we scan through the entire Rig Vedam, there are many epithets which are used for Saraswati, like Vritragni, a slayer of Vritra, a very popular narrative of Rig Veda, the Vriptasura being killed by Indra. So Saraswati had this epithet of being a warrior goddess in the Rig Veda. Today, in contemporary times, we have Ma Saraswati only for knowledge and wisdom. But in Rig Veda, Saraswati is revered for her protection in the war times, as well as the divinity that bestows good thoughts and intelligence. And also, there are certain geographical epithets like the one of 7 currents, Saptadhatu, Ranayu, Dhiyavaha, so on and so forth. Bottom line, the river Saraswati had the highest level of importance and significance throughout Rig Vedam. Next is river Sindhu, which is quoted almost 50 plus times throughout Rig Vedam. In the Rig Vedam, Sindhu, or what we call as Indus today, is portrayed with both masculine and feminine attributes, reflecting her dual role as a force of power and life. Sindhu is described as a warrior king, a leading bull of army's wings, roaring like a bull. These kinds of masculine epithets were used for Sindhu, the imagery that conveys strength, dominance, and sovereign command. These masculine metaphors depict Sindhu as a mightiest river, unmatched in its grandeur and authority, as a great king. At the same time, Sindhu is also likened to a beautiful horse, flowing gracefully and grouped with rivers described as milk-giving mothers. And Sindhu is also quoted as a mother that is nurturing, deeply feminine in nature. So all these epithets put together, Sindhu is also very important river in Rig Vedam, with both masculine and feminine deifications. And if we scan through Rig Vedam for the epithets of Sindhu, here are a couple of them. And especially when I was trying to make this content, what came to my mind was Sindhu was quoted as Rajeva Yudhva, which means like a king in the battle. Very interestingly and coincidentally, in the ongoing India and Pakistan conflict, the first blow that hit Pakistan very badly was the Indus Water Treaty. Very rightly said that Sindhu is a king in the war. But that aside, the Indus Valley civilization thrived on the banks of Sindhu. And Sindhu, the details of its geography, the way the river was back in those times, was very well detailed out in Rig Vedam. And the bottom line is, Sindhu is the second most important river for the people in those times back then. If we take a step back, now of all these rivers that were part of Rig Vedam, we saw about Saraswati and Sindhu. But what about other rivers? Where are those rivers today as we speak? And of course, I'm not going into the depth of Saraswati river. I'll do that a separate video about only Saraswati river. So I'll just limit it about Saraswati river for the moment for this video. But what about the other rivers of Rig Vedam? Let us try to understand that. So here are they. Sindhu, what we call Indus today, major river flowing through Tibet, India and Pakistan. Vitasta in Rig Vedam is called today as Jhelum. Asikni, now called as Chenab. It is also called as Chandrabhaga in Puranas. Parushni is called as Ravi, and the word Ravi is derived from its Puranic name Iravati. That's how it is called as in the Puranas, Iravati. And today we call it as Ravi. And in the Rigvedic times, it was Parushni. And then comes Satudri. Today we call it as Satlaj. In Mahabharatam, this river is called as Shatadru. And then comes Vipas. We call it as Byas today. In Mahabharatam, this river is called as Vipasha. Now, Sindhu, Vitasti, Asikni, Parushni, Shatadru, Vipas. These are the 5 rivers, excluding Sindhu, of course, flows through Punjab, and hence it is the land of 5 rivers, what we learned in our childhood. Now, the Indus Water Treaty choked off all these rivers towards Pakistan. I mean, it's not an immediate effect, but it's a very good move. But then Ganga and Yamuna also, we know about these rivers, how important they are. Now, all these rivers are in Bharat. And this is a quick outlook of the Rigvedic rivers as on today, how they are. Now let's see where are these rivers of Rigvedic period outside of India as on today. Starting with the first one, Kubha. That was the name in Rigveda, and today it is called as Kabul. I'm not talking about the city named Kabul in Afghanistan, but the river Kabul, which is just few kilometers away from the city Kabul of Afghanistan. In fact, the name Kabul is derived from the Rig Vedic name Kubha because of the river, and as a settlement that is close to the river, the city got its name from the river as Kabul. So it flows through Afghanistan and Pakistan. It is quite interesting to see that Afghanistan has the Rig Vedic roots. Another river mentioned in Rig Vedam is Krumu, which is today called as Kurram, and this flows through Pakistan. Again, the name Kurram is derived from the Rig Vedic name Krumu. Now, these countries, Afghanistan and Pakistan, they don't know their own heritage unless they dig deep into the Indian subcontinent scriptures like Rig Vedam. Again, as I said, I'm not referring to Rig Vedam as a spiritual or a religious text, but rather as a historical document that has the ancient geographical details well encoded, what you're seeing right on your screen. And then comes Gomati and Tritsama. Gomati of Rig Vedam is today called as Gomal, and it flows through Afghanistan and Pakistan. Now, the word Gomati could mean many aspects related to cow. One that originated from the thoughts of a cow, more from a spiritual sense, or from a geographic representation. Maybe it could be forming the contours of the head of a cow through its path that it is taking back in those times. So it could be anything, but end of the day, Gomati is a Rig Vedic river. Today it is called as Gomal, flowing through Pakistan and Afghanistan. And then comes Tritsama, which is called as Gilgit, River Gilgit, flowing through Pakistan in the regions of Gilgit-Baltistan. In fact, the name Gilgit-Baltistan comes from the name of the river Gilgit, which is actually called as Tritsama as part of Rig Veda. Another Rig Vedic river is Suvastu, which is today called as Swat, flowing through Pakistan. And then we have Kusaba, flowing through Afghanistan and called today as Kunar. Like this, the list goes on. I come back again to what I said. The ancient geography, especially about the rivers in Rig Veda, has a continuous legacy from those times till today. And it's very important to look at Rig Vedam not as a philosophical or religious or a spiritual text, but it is also a historical text, a source of live history that you can see right in front of your eyes. Let me conclude this video with a deeply important reflection. When we read the Rig Veda carefully, it becomes abundantly clear that many of the rivers praised in its hymns, Sindhu, Yamuna, Ganga, Parushni and others, are not just poetic symbols or personifications, but real rivers that still flow through the subcontinent even today. Most of these rivers can still be traced on the maps today, and yet there are few that seem to have vanished, perhaps dried up, perhaps shifted or simply lost in the sands of time. Among these, the river Saraswati stands as the most contested and most significant one. Listen carefully. There is a persistent narrative, especially in certain academic and ideological circles, that Saraswati is a mythical river, a fabrication of poetic imagination. But such a claim is either born out of ignorance or rooted in deeper motivations to suppress and kill the historical continuity of Bharat. Let me simplify this for you. The Rig Vedam talks about Saraswati river being the mother of all floods, a massive river that had lots of tributaries and all. And if Rig Vedam was written in 1500 BCE by so-called Aryans who came from Europe, then the river Saraswati must be flowing as massively as it was described in Rig Vedam in 1500 BCE. But in 1500 BCE, the Saraswati river got dried up completely. So you see, it doesn't match. That is the reason I said in the very beginning of the video that Max Muller himself said that the 1500 BCE date is wrong. But still, certain motivated ideological and religious groups hang on to this date because you have to fit the whole world's timeline in 6000 years, because that's what is mentioned in the Bible. You know what I mean? I don't want to go into deeper aspects of that. That's not in my interest. But the main point that I want to communicate to all of you is River Saraswati is not a mythical river. It is abundantly clear that all of its tributaries are alive and kicking even today, or maybe alive and flowing even today. But then how come the mother of all these tributaries is a mythical one? Maybe it got dried up. When and what? I will make a separate video. But the most important thing is Saraswati river is not a mythical river. It is not Antarvahini or all sorts of things. It is a proper massive river that flowed from the Himalayas towards the northwestern parts of Bharat. And finally, also let me put forward another commonsensical point. The Himalayas are around 50 million years old. So there must be rivers flowing since 50 million years. It's quite simple and common sense. Snow-fed or mountain-fed or glacier-fed rivers. It's quite natural to happen, right? So there must have been lots and lots of rivers, massive rivers, maybe even before Saraswati also it existed. We don't know. But as far as we are concerned and the Rig Veda is concerned, Saraswati river is not a mythical river. It is very much a real one. And with all that done and said, this is a brief account of the ancient rivers of the Rig Veda. As always, thanks for watching.